Welcome to the BetterPears podcast. Join Dr. Jason Fugikawa for his insights on theology, philosophy, culture, and the verbal expressions we use to relate meaning and reality to one another. Make no mistake, this is a podcast for nerds, but particular nerds who are searching for old wisdom made ever new. To learn more about the BetterPears cultural empire, please visit betterpears.com. Hello, I am Dr. Jason Fugikawa, and this is the BetterPears podcast. We begin this episode with a dedication to a late family friend whose legacy of abiding with the Fugikawas over half a century impressed me as a young man. This week's topic is menial labor, which in my arrangement of podcast topics is categorized as words often used and rarely considered. The purpose of the episode, like all those of the podcast, is to suggest a deeper etymology and etiology for the words we employ to express reality each day. Thus, while the positions offered in each episode are in no way definitive, it is my hope that they function as timeless attempts at expanding your palette for true and accurate verbal expression. If you disagree with a connection made in the episode, please respond in the comments. If you enjoy this production, I also ask that you like the episode, subscribe to the podcast, and leave a comment should you be so inclined and able on this listening platform. This simple task truly helps us reach a wider audience. To receive the transcript of each episode and be the first to learn of BetterPears announcements, please sign up to our newsletter at the bottom of the page at betterpears.com. New upcoming BetterPears Greenhouse Fellowships participatory dramatic readings of Shakespeare's greatest plays have been added to the website. Each fellowship consists of 2 reading sessions in a domestic setting, featuring an experience guide, delicious food, and a Shakespearean masterpiece, all for a fixed price. In addition, some of our weekend fellowships are now designated for coffee, tea, and fresh pear service in lieu of our regular refreshments at a reduced cost to fellows. To learn more, watch our introductory video, and register, please visit betterpears.com/greenhouse. If you enjoy the BetterPears podcast somewhere downrange from OKC and would like to host a BetterPears fellowship in your hometown, please let us know by leaving a comment or emailing me through the contact page of the website. Finally, the BetterPears podcast is offered free through the wonder of the internet, but made possible through the continued contributions of our listener audience. Last month, we announced our new crowdfunding program, BetterPears Leaves. Contribute $12 or more each month to BetterPears and receive a thank you gift in the mail. To learn more, visit betterpears.com/leaves. Thank you for your continued patronage of attention and Federal Reserve notes. And now, on with the episode. Dedication. The late Peggy Ann Whitrock was a curious fixture of extended Fugikawa family gatherings in my youth. I say curious both in the sense of her near-regal status as lifelong friend of my grandmother, and the sense in which her constant presence was unaccounted by the customary bond of blood or marriage. Margaret Ann Whitrock was the third child of Charles and Eleanor Whitrock. It was Charles who responded to my grandfather's plea before a group of Catholic men in Cincinnati, Ohio, to sponsor the Fugikawas and end their internment in Arkansas during the Second World War. In this way, Ohio, like a century earlier, again became the land of freedom within the land of the free. My father would be born on the Whitrock farm north of the city, where my grandparents served as tenant farmers during the sponsorship. It was through this time of national distrust that the fidelity of the Whitrock and Fugikawa houses emerged and impressed on me some decades later the strength of tribe and allegiance between families, which exists beyond the family itself, but remains more binding than oaths to state or nation. It is this allegiance that frames the debt of Beowulf to confront Grendel in the hall of Hrothgar, and Brutus to affront Caesar as the new Tarquin. It explains how amid the looming darkness from where the shadows lie, a flicker of distant signal fire long forgotten echoes with the thunder of the Rohirrim and the trumpets of war. Episode 8. Menial Labor. Menial is a charged word in present parlance near the mid-3rd century of the American experiment. The word bears a prima facie pejorative connotation, perhaps as a result of the abolition of slavery in the mid-19th century, and the rise of socialism imported from the Old World that followed into the 20th century, when the term correctly or incorrectly became predicated of the labor performed by housewives. Menial is an adjective derived from the Greek verb meno, meaning to stand fast, remain, or abide. A menial servant or laborer is one who lives with his or her employer or, in the case of slavery, the putative owner. What is more than simply the added or otherwise transferred expense of the employer to provide a living space or other accommodations for the menials is the certain vulnerability that the employer offers to these non-familiar residents. The intrigue of the Downton Abbey television program relied upon this tension between vulnerability, duty, and class distinction, while P.G. Woodhouse's character Jeeves seems always to seek his master's interests, whether expressed or tacit, conscious or otherwise. Perhaps the fullest embodiment of menial service for contemporary audiences is Alfred Pennyworth of Wayne Manor, who becomes guardian of the orphaned heir and double lifelong support. There is a richness in menial labor which transcends the realm of wages and compensation. Meno is one of the verbs that fills John's account of Jesus' Last Supper discourse on the vine and the branches. Quote, "Abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. If a man does not abide in me, he is cast forth as a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you will, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments, and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and your joy may be full." John 15, verses 4 through 11, RSV CE. The verb for abide is the very same meno in the original Greek. Our goal or purpose in life, from the very lips of its author, Jesus Christ, is to abide in him and so abide in the Father. That is all. The flurry of human activity in life, the wars, the commerce, the daily grind for millennia, terminates either in abiding or perdition. While the latter end is a topic for a subsequent episode this season, this act of abiding or remaining should be noted at present for its status outside the norm for contingent beings. Like the 21st century college freshman who thinks that he or she has a high mark in a course until the professor lowers it, we as contingent human beings can mistakenly believe that our existence is necessary. So removed are we by the time we have use of reason from the time when we were not, and the miracle of our conception and birth. We even talk about depending on God as if from some foundation of our own, when the reality is that we depend from God as one so suspended over the abyss of non-existence, save for the enduring sustenance of creation, that God alone speaks forth for our being and good. In this way, remaining with God is the greatest outcome of our lives, not only on account of our sustained existence, not only on account of who God is, but also on account of what this invites us to become. To grasp this additional reality, we turn to Christian monasticism. Notably, a monk is so called on account of his stability, again from meno, and not on account of his solitary state, stemming from mono, as not all monks are hermits. Just as St. John remained with Christ at the Last Supper and at the foot of the cross, but did not die at the hand of persecutors, so too did the early monk fathers who survived the Roman persecutions. These early monks contemplated how best to live the Christian life beyond the context of certain martyrdom, for without the persecution of men after the Edict of Milan, granting a few persecutorial hiccups, how could one best avoid the persecution of evil spirits and so radically embrace the Christian life? The witness of St. Anthony of Egypt demonstrated that a life of prayer and spiritual asceticism or exercise could lead to greater holiness and increased communion with God. Later, in the waning decades of the Roman Empire, St. Benedict of Nursia radically embraced the Christian life by embracing radishes, that is, through labor, which some might call menial labor, paired with a schedule of prayer. The motto or program of life for these Benedictines has since been ora et labora, pray and work. And yet I have long wondered if this motto was not a pleasant hendiades, a grammatical structure in which one thing is expressed by two, literally from the Greek hen, meaning one, dia, meaning through, and dis, meaning two. What I mean here is that ora, which we translate as pray, is manifested in the monastic life through the keeping of the divine office. Office, or officium, being composed of the Latin preposition ob and the verb facio, meaning to do or make, that is, work. The prayers of the monks are the great work of their community, a work not only for their community, but for the communion of the faithful beyond their walls. Similarly, the horticultural labor of the monks remains rooted in the exhortation of every farmer that God open the seed to bring forth his harvest. In addition to this direct connection between horticultural labor and prayer, there is the puzzle of how the root lab enters our diction in the West. It appears as a ready-made verbal construct in Golden Age Latin, laboro laborare, but did it derive from the Greek lambano, lapsomai elabon, meaning to take hold, grasp, seize? In addition to explaining why a fugitive is said to be on the lam, because he or she has taken or seized liberty that has been duly lost to them, this connection with labor would correspond initially to our human use of tools that must be taken up in the course of work. Even bestial labor seems to require some yoke or harness to be taken up. Further, this word origin would correspond to the economic argument of Pope Leo XIII for the right to private property in his 1891 encyclical Rerum Novarum. Quote, "As effects follow their cause, so it is just and right that the results of labor should belong to those who have bestowed their labor." End quote. Labor, so it seems, extends ownership to its results, a certain participation or partaking in the literal sense of the created order. While Karl Marx would tend to conflate the worker and his labor and assess the value of the former by the quality or quantity of the latter, Saint Josemaria Escriba, like his patron Saint Joseph, would recognize that even in the productive way of life, there is an opportunity to affirm and perfect the practical and political way of life. By this admittedly superimposed Aristotelian schema, I mean that even in the production of things external to us, such as food, garments, or widgets, there is an opportunity to improve ourselves as the one producing both in our excellence of skill and the reason or purpose for our labor. On the one hand, greed, pride, or envy. On the other hand, to care for your spouse, to feed your hungry child, or simply for the greater glory of God. The intention of our labor, menial or otherwise, is the optic for Opus Dei, the work of God, by Him, through Him, and for Him. This has all been a long way of arguing, or more properly suggesting, that our goal is to become menial laborers in God's house, not because I deny the adopted sonship of my baptism, but because remaining in God, abiding in Him, is participatory for us in this life and the next, through labor. Labor is a taking and not merely a giving. In labor we wed our intention and action to the good produced externally or internally. In the case of the latter, we find ourselves enmeshed in others through a communion of the common good. The views expressed by BetterPears contributors are theirs alone, and do not necessarily reflect the views of BetterPears, its parent company, or any company or organization affiliated with the contributors. For more information, to support BetterPears, or to shop for BetterPears merchandise, please visit BetterPears.com.